Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Let's Talk Marketing with Nathan A. Webster's podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Webster, and I'm excited to chop it up with you today. Today, for episode 53, I want to focus on, and not just me, but in 53, how to increase your marketing budget and improve your content marketing. And I said it's not just me because I got the PDX godfather of marketing here with me, Mr. Kent Lewis. What's up, Kent?
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, man, it is always a pleasure. Got you in color, live in color, I should say. And we're talking about two issues. We're gonna two for it, but it's a double-edged sword of what I think we are now up against in regards to this post-COVID economy, because getting people's attention is that much harder, but you can't do it just off of your good luck. So talk to the listeners out there your version of how to increase, and even if they don't have a budget, how do they create a budget and improve their ORM?
So, one thing I've struggled with having a career in digital marketing has been getting started as early as I did. It was really hard to convince marketers to spend money on a website and then spend more money on marketing that website. We're talking the mid 90s here. And then since then, 9 agencies later, it's a constant battle to secure sufficient budget to do what we need to do. And one area that's particularly sticky is content marketing. Now, when we talk about planning and making a case for more budget for marketing, the tips and tricks we'll cover would work for any budget for any concept. But I think before we go into those tips and tricks, I think we need to frame up the discussion a little bit on why content marketing matters. And you mentioned the whole budgeting thing, like how much should you spend on content marketing? So I dug up a bunch of research for an article on Smart Brief that we'll reference in the notes. But I looked at a couple different studies, SEMrush and a couple others, did extensive content marketing surveying of marketers earlier this year. And so a couple of stats for you. Number one, 46% of consumer brand marketers indicate their biggest challenge with content marketing programs is securing budget. So that's what this whole thing is about. Okay. Now, despite that fact, the average brand marketer invests up to 40% of its total marketing budget on content. So despite it being a challenge, they're spending nearly half of their budget on content. Now, my experience with content is it's the critical foundation, but it's also the last mile. It can be the core and the stepchild at the same time. In my experience of doing search engine optimization, paid search, paid social, organic social, is that content is typically undervalued and overpaid for, and often can underperform. But without content, there is no SEO, there is no email marketing. It really cuts down what you can do with marketing.
Is this where they say content is king, correct?
Yeah, king, queen, the whole court jester, all of the above. And according to Forrester research, future customers are between 67 and 90% of the way through their shopping before they reach you. So what you're trying to do with your content is get that conversion. So a lot of people think about content as early stage, top of the funnel education, and that's true. But I was just talking to a client of mine that sells e-bikes, manufactures and sells e-bikes. And the big challenge for them is, how do you convince somebody to spend $7,000 on an e-bike when you can buy one for under $1,000 at Costco? They're both electric, they're both battery powered, they're both pedal assist, but there's a huge difference. It's like saying, how do you spend $250,000 on a Ferrari instead of $10,000 on a used Ford pickup? Two totally different things, but they still have four wheels and a steering wheel. So one thing to keep in mind is that a vast majority, 96% of content marketers say their marketing has helped build credibility and trust with their audience. Obviously, reading more about a product and a brand can help. 95% of B2B product buyers believe that content is trustworthy when they're evaluating a purchase. And content marketing, this is a little surprise for me based on my experience, costs 62% less than traditional marketing programs and generates 3 times the leads. Now, we don't do traditional marketing at Anvil for the most part. So um, I guess that only surprised me because I don't really work in the world of big, fat, expensive ads on broadcast or print, or big direct mail campaigns, or big conference exhibits and events. Those are all part of an important part of the marketing mix, but it's no wonder that comparatively, the low cost of marketing, of good content marketing, can generate significantly more leads. It's not going to generate more than SEO or paid search or even email marketing, in my estimation. Two other facts: 68% of marketers expect their content budget to increase this year, and 47% of companies last year had a budget of over $10,000 for content marketing, which was up significantly over 2019. So basically, what we're saying is, at this point, a majority of companies are spending more than $10,000 on content marketing when you talk about budgeting. And depending, obviously, on the size and shape of your business, it will vary. Um, but what we're seeing is about 10% of our clients' budgets are being spent on content development. But that's typically not including a salary of a copywriter. It's external resources. So if you factor in a salaried copywriter, it goes up 20 to 30%. You can see the stats as high as 40% of budget. So that's kind of what's going on for some context. And then we can take a break here, and then we can talk about building a plan.
Mm. What I think is interesting is when you talked about how with the content marketing budgets, with you put in your article that where did I see that at? Venture capitalists have already invested more than 1 billion in content marketing tech companies since 2006,
Mhm.
and the industry is on track to generate 313 billion in revenue by 2020. So, and that was based on your research on the PQ Media Global Content Marketing Forecast. And I think what's really important is when you say content, this is what is the unsexy part of marketing, and especially to my marketing students, when I say you have to create content, and that's just not content that you can just pull out of the sky, nor do you want to copy it from anyone. You have to create it on your own. Original content is hard work. It takes time. And that's just, as you talked about the copywriter, that, text, if you're going to get any sort of media collateral, you got to get an expert. Don't expect to like buy a drone, which I'm looking at, getting a drone and taking some aerials, but you got to learn how the FAA works. You got to learn that industry. You got to learn the tips and tricks, as you mentioned earlier. And I think it's not as easy as you think. So when we talk content marketing, or as you were saying, it's super important, but and you have to have it, but it's not easy to come by nor create. So I think it part of allocating not only budget, like it's like hard cold cash, you also need to allocate your time, because it doesn't happen overnight.
That's right. And so you have to take it seriously. And with the context of what are people spending, what could you spend, that's just to frame it up. But really, you need to start with a plan, right? So I always recommend, whether I'm doing helping a client with an overall go-to-market strategy, with a fully integrated marketing plan, omnichannel, all that, or it's just I need help with SEO or paid search or social. You have to start with the foundational plan. Who's the target
Mhm.
audience? What are the key messages? What's the overall objective or goal? What's the call to action, basically? What channels are you going to use? All of that's kind of foundational.
Mhm.
And then you have to do a needs assessment. What resources do you have in house? And then what else do you need to augment? So recently, we've been getting more and more clients, because we're not known as a content marketing agency by choice. We've had more clients recently say, we need your help. So we're actually building in time to create content, whereas we normally optimize, syndicate, measure it. So we're adding that component in. And what's interesting is that a lot of companies are very understaffed in content. It's hard to hire and develop and retain copywriters when that's not your culture. or you
Hmm.
have a very niche industry where it's really hard to understand what they do, what your company does, what your products do, especially in technology. Um, so what I suggest is you look at all the internal resources, then you also map that against your competitive and landscape, your competitors and your competitive landscape to understand, like, if your competitors are churning out a blog post a day and you're starting at one a month, that may not be enough, right? So you need the context. The way I look at it is, you and I are coaches, track coaches, and we can help somebody run faster or jump higher. But
Mm.
until we know what the competition's doing, they'll never get a gold, most likely, without knowing how to train against the competition. So that's what the competitive analysis is so important for. Um, and then make sure you budget in not just for talent in-house or external, but for the tools, the HubSpots, the Hootsuites. What do you need for sales and marketing automation, for content distribution? Do you have a CMS? Are you on WordPress? Is it easy to maintain and manage and optimize that content? That's important. So a couple of key goals to be keep in mind that we most often see: content strategy, content marketing should ideally increase customer retention or loyalty, because your current customers are your most profitable customers. So renewals, lifetime customer value. Think of content. So one of the things why you see so many ads for Ford and the big three is not to sell new trucks. It's to help, or cars. It's to help recent buyers feel better about their purchase. What we call post-purchase dissonance, right? You want to mitigate that so they don't feel bad about dropping 40 or 50 grand on a pickup truck. So you do a bunch of advertising, make them feel better about it. That's one strategy. Another is increasing engagement. Content, it can be great. So measure that with time on site, average pages per visitor, bounce rates, and then increase conversions, obviously, whatever those are. Orders for e-commerce, or requests for more information for B2B, or downloads. And then general, last but not least is the conversion rates, on your website. So whatever those elements are, you want to measure those, set a benchmark and set a goal. But again, reiterate, yeah, it's great to hire Nathan or I to help you with your marketing strategy or even implementation. But I do recommend, as my unsales strategy, leverage what you have first, your internal resources. And by that, I mean, Nathan is triple threat. He can write, he can do a bunch of different things in the planning, execution, and marketing. And Anvil similarly takes that approach. But if I don't believe that any marketing agency can know more or as much as a brand as the internal employees. So you're better off getting just minimally some guidance from your employees, if not fully written blog posts or articles or webinars or whatever the content. But minimally, our recommendation is, if you're outsourcing, have them have a direct relationship with your employees to really get in touch with the brand and the culture and the vibe, not just a style guide. That's very two-dimensional. It's helpful, it's important, but it's not the whole story. So for example, 15 plus years ago, we were writing blog posts for a hotel in Nashville, Tacoma, and Seattle from Portland. Which I had two different copywriters writing for them. But every
Hmm.
month they interviewed the real employees and got their story, and just were better writers than those employees, but told their story exceptionally well. So that was back when blogging was relatively new. And it was a huge success. So, but that only worked because they gave us the time to get to know them and the company, and really was writing about what mattered to that hotel and that neighboring area, the attractions, events, the music, the scene, as seen by the employees. So it was very authentic. And they just didn't have anybody to write it, so that's what we did. And then again, so you collect and collect the best insights, build those into, your outsourced resources can create and curate a story from that, gathering new information, modifying, optimizing, syndicating it, measuring and learning, and then getting more new content ideas or additional information or insights from employees. And then also, don't forget, there's other relationships within the company. So there's not just your sales team, your customer service team, your marketing or PR team, could be executives or product development, depending on your industry. So factor all of that into your plan. So you're not just writing a check to a vendor like us. We will take your money, we will do good work, but minimally expect that you should have a direct line of communication with your key employees and that vendor to write and create the best content possible.
Mm. The only thing I would add to that is to have that strategy, make sure you believe 100% in the value proposition that you're offering in the marketplace. And that not only you can say that you can dominate and you're really good at it, like you're sweet, but your clients can say the same thing, because there's nothing like trying to help a customer and when their Google reviews don't match it, or if they don't even have reviews, that's something different. So, a strategy, a plan, all that works, and make sure you get all that, but make sure that your value proposition or that product or service is on point, because that's something that we cannot control. No matter, it's like what they say, putting lipstick on a pig. It's it's still a pig. So don't expect marketing to save that piece of it. We're only doing we're enhancing it to, and hopefully filling the chasm of where you're not able to fill at that point. So that's the only thing I want to add. And if you need to re-listen to that piece about conversion too, re-listen to that, because I think that's really important for those that want to ask for a bigger budget and might not know how to phrase it and frame it in a way for the key leaders to say, okay, here's an extra 5, 10,000. Here's where you can say, we're going to leverage this here. We're going to optimize things here. And this is where we can get conversion. Kent, the only thing I haven't heard you talked about yet, and maybe you can help them, but for that ROI, even from either ad spend or strategy, what can you tell the listeners in regards to if they're going to advocate for a bigger budget? What can they tell their bosses or their potential clients that they can start seeing results?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So you've done your research, you've made your case. I mean, you've built a case, I should say. Now, how do you make your case, right, to management? So you can talk about, there are 3 steps that I typically take to secure budget from clients or buy off from my team or even my family about whatever it is, right? So I think the first step you've already done, which is appeal to logic by utilizing key industry research about what content marketing is, the potential return. Looked at a 3x higher return than traditional marketing. We looked at what budgets are increasing, that whole social proof thing. Utilize the stats that we've already given you to make a case for content marketing. You can use this same process to secure any approval for anything. But in this case, we've already given you the first step, all the ammo you need. Now, what I've found is there are really 2 types of managers. There's the bean counter that comes from the accounting finance side, where that actually is very helpful. And then there's the true entrepreneur leader type that doesn't really care so much about hard numbers, right? They're not the bean counter, they're the visionary. They're the empathic leader. And that doesn't seem to, if that doesn't work, here's what's going on in the industry of content marketing and the kind of return you can expect. If that doesn't work, then I go to step 2, and that's appealing to ego. So basically, this works really well for the non-bean counters, right? That are very much about being a leader, taking a leadership position, staying ahead of the competition. So what I then do is I have already conducted competitive industry benchmarking to see, what is the volume of their content, what is the quality of that content, the frequency, and then what do I estimate as the return? Because there are tools we use in our industry like SEMrush and SpyFu where I can see site traffic, so I can and estimated bounce rates and other things, so I can see, is their content working better than ours? Are they ranking better with that content if SEO is the goal, in particular search engine optimization? So the competitive, if I'd say a third of the time, the stats work, and 60%, I would say 30%, 60% of the time, appealing to ego works. Meaning it's really hard for somebody, when you make your own brand look like it's suffering against the competition, it takes a true weirdo to say that's not a problem. Being a laggard is not a problem. You could argue that's a visionary. I don't know who that is, but generally putting yourself in context of the marketplace, like it's how I used to justify speeding to my family. Everybody else is going 75. I don't want to get rear-ended, so it's all contextual. That's still speeding, right? But you're going with the flow. So that's a really good step. So that should get you 90% of the way to approval. And if that doesn't work, there's the more controversial 10% success rate of begging for forgiveness. You see this in the movies, you read it in books, where more so than I see it in real life, is that you've made your case, you feel so confident this will work that you just go ahead and do it. Do a test level engagement so you don't bankrupt the company with your ideas. But basically, you run a test. You A/B test. Um, 1 month you do what you've always been doing. The next month you do it your way. 3 blog posts, optimize, and then look at the traffic increase. And then you go back and you make the case this works. And just because you didn't get approval is diminished theoretically by the fact that it works really well. And then you get the formal approval after the fact. And if it fails, maybe you forget to tell them, but you've reduced your risk so much there wasn't any meaningful cost to it that you have to apologize. It's mainly apologizing for doing something without formal approval. Again, most successful leaders and business owners at some point have employed this step to get to the next step. So if you watch like, for instance, the DeLorean documentary on Netflix, that's what he did when he first created the Pontiac GTO. Is he basically tricked GM into approving it, and it became an overnight hit, and he became a star. It was a big gamble, and it affected how he looked at every one of his ideas moving forward, that they were all brilliant, when in fact maybe they weren't. He's the maker of the DeLorean from Back to the Future, long before the movie came out. But point is, it can work really well, but be careful. It obviously can bite you in the ass, potentially get you fired. But it is that 10 percentile that can get that approval where nothing else works.
Man, that's fire. And I think that's oh man, that is so, I will say, powerful, because a lot of people don't want to take risks, but you have to take risk. It's a calculated risk. And for those that do want to take a lot of risk, just know it can bite you, like you just said. So man, that was fire. Thank you for dropping them diamonds, Kent. So where can the listeners find you at, my man?
You can always find me on the Twitter at Kent J. Lewis, or Anvil Media. And then you can also go to our website, anvilmedia.com. And you can please connect with me on the LinkedIn. Just Google Kent Lewis Portland if you want to be extra careful. But there are a few Kent Lewises out there, but I'm the one that ranks best on Google because that's my job. So hope to see you on the interwebs.
Awesome, Kent. Always a pleasure, my man. Always.
Yeah, my pleasure as always as well.
All right, y'all. Y'all heard it first right here. When it comes to, for those that need either a budget or to increase your budget and want to improve your content marketing, I will include the link that Kent is talking about in the show notes. It is how to advocate for a bigger content marketing budget. I will put that in the notes, and you can find us at nwebsterllc.com to learn more of who we are and what we do. On LinkedIn, I'm at Nathan A. Webster. Instagram, Nathan Webster 543, or the company NW in with the N Associates. And at Twitter, I'm at Nathan A. Webster. I want to say thank you to our podcast sponsor, NW, LOVE.com, NW Love, for being a sponsor to the show. And for those that have not left a review, go on and do that. Stop playing around. Stop doing that. So with that, I'm going to call it a wrap. So without further ado, dream big and Godspeed.